She walked into Judge Caprio's courtroom like it was a stage. 17 years old, phone in hand, gum in her mouth, laughing as if none of this mattered. Her friends whispered from the back row, recording every second for social media. When the clerk announced the charge, reckless driving in a school zone, she rolled her eyes and said, "Guess I'll just pay it and go." The courtroom chuckled nervously. Caprio didn't. He leaned forward, voice steady but soft. "Young lady," he said, "you may pay the fine, but you can't buy back a second of what almost happened." What followed left everyone silent, even her. Her name was Mia Russo, a high school senior from a quiet but affluent Rhode Island suburb, the kind of town where last names carried more weight than actions. Her father, Anthony Russo, owned half the city's construction contracts. Her mother chaired the PTA, known for smiling through every scandal and hosting fundraisers that doubled as social competitions. Mia had grown up believing the rules were flexible, especially for people who could afford the fines. At school, she was the girl everyone knew, sharp-tongued, fearless, and always dressed like she had somewhere more important to be. Teachers described her as bright but distracted. Friends called her confident. Others whispered a different word, arrogant. That morning, a drizzle slicked the roads outside Lincoln Elementary. The crossing guard, Mr. Hanley, had just unfolded his stop sign when a silver coupe came tearing around the corner. The radar gun read 47 in a 25. Tires screeched. Chalk dust rose from the curb. Her car missed the crosswalk by inches. When the officer approached her window, she sighed, tapping her nails against the steering wheel. "Relax," she muttered. "It's not like anyone got hurt." The remark made it into the police report, and within hours into the headlines. By the time she walked into Judge Caprio's courtroom, the whispers had turned to outrage. Parents called it privilege. Teachers called it proof. And Mia? She sat scrolling her phone, legs crossed, pretending not to hear any of it. But in the back row sat a man she didn't notice. Thin frame, steady hands resting on a worn cane. His eyes didn't hold anger. They held disappointment. He wasn't there to punish her. He was there to remind her how close she came to changing a life forever. Judge Frank Caprio adjusted his glasses and looked up from the file in front of him. His tone, as always, was calm, not cold, not condescending, just patient. The kind of patience that came from decades of seeing the same mistakes dressed in different faces. "Miss Russo," he said gently, "please step forward." Mia rose, her designer sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. She kept her chin up, confidence masking the unease that flickered beneath. "Do you know why you're here today?" Caprio asked. She gave a small shrug, almost a laugh. "For driving too fast, I guess." He nodded once. "Not guess, young lady. You were driving too fast in a school zone." She crossed her arms. "Yeah, but it was early. There weren't even kids out yet." Caprio tilted his head, his expression thoughtful. "And how do you know that?" Mia blinked. "I didn't see any." The judge leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering. "You didn't see because you didn't look." The words hung in the air like a gavel before it fell. A faint murmur rippled through the courtroom. Caprio lifted a hand and the sound died instantly. "This courtroom," he said, "is not a payment portal. It's a place for reflection." Mia's smile flickered, the kind that hides behind discomfort. He continued, his tone still measured but firm. "You think this is about money, about a number on a ticket? No, it's about attention, about the value of a single moment before something irreversible happens." Mia looked away. For the first time, her confidence wavered. Caprio softened. "Would you like to see something, Miss Russo? Something that might change how you remember that morning?" She hesitated. "Sure," he nodded to the clerk. "Let's show the footage." The lights dimmed slightly. The room fell quiet enough to hear the hum of the projector. What was about to appear on that screen would stop her laughter and start something she never expected. Remorse. The courtroom lights dimmed as the monitor flickered to life. The static cleared, revealing grainy footage from a school security camera. A timestamp in the corner read 7:52 a.m. The same minute stamped on Mia's ticket. The scene unfolded in silence. A silver coupe turned the corner far too fast, its tires slicing through a shallow puddle. The car's nose dipped as the brakes screeched, stopping inches from a man in a bright reflective vest holding a red stop sign. He stumbled backward, clutching the pole for balance as his hat flew off. Behind him, two small children froze on the sidewalk, their backpacks swinging from the momentum of a sudden stop. Mia's jaw slackened. She stared at the screen as if trying to prove it wasn't her, but the license plate, the color, the moment, it all matched. Judge Caprio sat quietly, hands folded over a worn case file. His expression didn't harden, but his eyes softened in that way only disappointment can. After a long moment, he spoke gently. "That's Mr. Hanley," he said, pointing at the man on the screen. "He's been the crossing guard there for 23 years. The video froze on the image of the elderly man steadying himself. Caprio continued, his tone quiet but resonant. "He lost his wife last winter, yet every morning, rain or shine, he stands in that same spot to make sure someone else's child gets home safe." A soft gasp came from the benches behind Mia, perhaps a parent recognizing the intersection, or a teacher who'd walked those same children across the street. Mia swallowed hard. Her voice was barely a whisper. I didn't know." Caprio nodded slowly. "That's the problem with speed, Ms. Russo. It doesn't just blur the road, it blurs empathy." The silence that followed was heavy, absolute. Even the faint hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to pause. In that stillness, the screen remained frozen. Her car, the man, the distance between them, a single frame that now carried the weight of a lesson she'd never forget. Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair, eyes thoughtful. Then he turned to the bailiff. "Please hand Ms. Russo this envelope," he said. The bailiff stepped forward and placed a plain, cream-colored envelope on the podium before Mia. Her fingers trembled slightly as she picked it up. On the front, written in uneven cursive, were the words, "For the young driver." "Go ahead," Caprio said softly. "Read it aloud." Mia unfolded the paper. It was lined notebook paper, the kind used in schools. The ink had bled in a few places where perhaps the writer's hand had paused. Her voice wavered as she began to read. "Dear young driver, I'm not angry. I was scared. Not for myself, but for the children behind me. They were only a few steps away. I've been hit before, years ago, by someone in a hurry. It happens fast, and you never forget the sound of tires that close. If you ever have kids someday, I hope someone watches over them with the same care I try to give." Mia stopped. Her throat tightened. She blinked fast, as if the words were blurring. Halfway through, her voice cracked, and the last line came out as a whisper. Her mother, seated in the second row, pressed a tissue to her mouth. The courtroom was utterly still. No shifting chairs, no coughs, no whispers. Caprio didn't speak right away. He let the silence linger for 5 long seconds, giving the words space to breathe, to sink in. Then finally he leaned forward. "Do you understand now," he asked quietly, "why that fine isn't just about money?" Mia nodded slowly, her eyes wet. "Yes, Your Honor." He gave a faint, almost sorrowful smile. "Good," he said, "because justice isn't a receipt. It's a reminder." The paper trembled in her hands, but she didn't fold it. She held onto it, as if it were proof that mercy, too, can leave a mark. Judge Caprio folded his hands, elbows resting on the bench. His voice softened, but it carried through the room like steady thunder. "Tell me, Ms. Russo," he began, "what do you think this community needs most from someone your age?" Mia hesitated, eyes still on the letter in her trembling hands. "Respect, I guess," she murmured. "Respect," Caprio repeated, tasting the word as if measuring its weight. "A good start, but respect begins where convenience ends." Mia looked up. Her posture was different now, no longer defensive, but open, uncertain. Caprio continued, his words deliberate and clear, each one landing with the precision of a truth long learned. "Access is not a right, it's a responsibility. Driving isn't freedom, it's trust on wheels. Mercy isn't for those who pay, it's for those who learn." Each line struck like a gavel, not loud, not dramatic, but final, the kind of truths that echo in silence more than in sound. Mia's throat tightened. She wasn't crying anymore. She was listening, really listening. Caprio looked around the courtroom, his gaze sweeping over the parents, the students, the officers, and then back to her. "I've seen thousands of cases come through here," he said. "Tickets, violations, mistakes. But what separates a lesson from a tragedy is humility. When arrogance meets accountability, that's when growth begins." He leaned forward slightly, his tone almost paternal now. "The law can punish, yes, but it can also protect you from becoming someone careless, someone numb." Mia nodded faintly, her voice barely audible. "I understand. I believe you do," Caprio said. Then, after a pause, he added quietly, "You remind me of my granddaughter, full of promise, but sometimes too sure the world will wait for her. It never does." The room stayed utterly still. Even the clerk, usually robotic in his duties, stared at the young girl with damp eyes. In that suspended moment, justice didn't feel like judgment. It felt like guidance, the kind that doesn't end when the gavel falls, but when the lesson takes root. Judge Caprio slowly closed the folder before him, the sound of paper sliding against wood echoing softly through the courtroom. He looked up at Mia. No anger, no triumph, only quiet certainty in his eyes. "Miss Russo," he began, "this court sentenced you to 150 hours of community service, to be completed at Lincoln Elementary School, the same place whose children you endangered that morning." The words landed heavier than any fine could. Mia's lawyer instinctively rose to speak, but Caprio lifted his hand. "Sit down, counsel. There's nothing to argue here." He turned back to Mia. "You'll help repaint the crosswalks you ignored. You'll organize safety workshops for students and parents. And each morning you're there, you'll stand beside Mr. Hanley and help escort children safely across that street." A quiet ripple went through the crowd. Not outrage, not pity, but a strange kind of approval. Justice, finally, that meant something. Caprio leaned forward, voice softer now. "That's justice, Ms. Russo. Not to shame, but to show. Not to humiliate, but to heal." He paused, letting his next words carry the weight of purpose. "Perhaps you'll find something there that no fine, no apology, and no headline could ever teach." Mia nodded, her voice small but steady. "Thank you, Your Honor." Caprio smiled faintly, the kind of smile only a man who believes in second chances could give. "Don't thank me," he said, gesturing gently toward the back row. "Thank the man who wrote that letter, the one who chose forgiveness when he could have demanded punishment." Mr. Hanley bowed his head slightly, his hand resting on his cane. The gavel came down once, firm, final, merciful. It wasn't the sound of punishment, it was the sound of a life beginning to change. 2 months later, the morning sun glowed over Lincoln Elementary, the same stretch of pavement that had once echoed with screeching brakes. But now it looked different, bright, clean, safe. The crosswalk lines gleamed in fresh yellow paint, and at the center of it all stood Mia Russo, wearing jeans, a reflective vest, and a quiet smile that carried none of her old arrogance. A local news crew filmed from across the street, capturing the scene that words alone couldn't describe. Children waved at her as she guided them across, her hand raised, her movements calm and steady. The same children she once put at risk now trusted her completely. One little boy tugged at her sleeve. "Are you the lady from the video?" he asked, eyes wide with innocent curiosity. Mia hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Not anymore," she said. After her service hours, she stayed longer than required. She helped teachers organize traffic safety lessons, bought reflective vests for volunteers, and even donated dozens of new bike helmets to the school, anonymously. No cameras, no interviews, no social media posts, just quiet repair. By late spring, her transformation had become a small-town legend. Someone uploaded a photo of her painting the crosswalk, and within days it spread online with a new headline: "From Contempt to Compassion, Judge Caprio's Sentence That Changed a Life." The video reached millions, but Mia didn't read the comments or chase attention. She just showed up every morning, early, unannounced, to keep helping. On her final day of service, Mr. Hanley stood by the fence, leaning on his cane. When the last child crossed, he approached her slowly. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. No apologies, no speeches. Then gently, he placed a hand on her shoulder. She nodded once, her eyes glistening. No words were spoken. None were needed. The silence said everything, about forgiveness, about growth, and about the strange, powerful kind of justice that doesn't end in punishment, but begins in understanding. Judge Caprio once said, "Mercy doesn't erase the past, it rewrites the future." Mia Russo learned that lesson not from punishment, but from purpose. Her story became a quiet reminder that justice isn't about breaking people, it's about helping them rebuild. Because true change doesn't happen in the courtroom, it happens on the crosswalk. Subscribe if you believe mercy and accountability can coexist, because every second chance deserves a story.